Class is in session. Hey everybody, and welcome to Unlearn 16. Class is in session. For those who know me a little bit, this is my Uncle Ray. And he's already leading with some pretty hard shots. So this should be an interesting... The first thing he said was, is this going out live? Can we edit it? And I said, I'm not going to edit it. He goes, okay. I go, what'd you think about my book? And you said...
we can talk about it on the video.
Oh, okay. First and foremost, just to give people some background. Number one, Ray is my mom's youngest brother. Number two, very much like a father figure, maybe an older brother. I mean, I don't really know. Maybe a back and forth in there. There's a 13-year difference.
13-year gap.
13-year gap. So he was around my whole life. Like whether he was taking care of me when I were young, we lived together as a whole family for a few years in Mansfield. And right to this day, anytime I have a problem, I call him and he comes down in about 37 seconds. So
I practiced on you, failed miserably, and then had my own children.
He's on his own. He has 3 kids. Apparently he says he's practiced on me. That's nice. So what mistakes did we make with me, do you think, that you like reshaped and then put onto your own, obviously perfect children?
Everything. I remember being so frustrated by you, right? Your mom would always side with you. Your mom would always think you were perfect.
And let's be honest.
And it was frustrating.
Who do you know that's more perfect than I? You're going to say Rebecca.
It's true.
And that's just because blood.
And Dempsey. Dempsey is my favorite.
The dog!
It's a really good grandpa.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, needless to say, Ray and I have been through pretty much, I'm going to get into a few stories, but we're going to start with the chapter of the book. So he wanted to wait. So what do you think about the book?
I think you represented my oddities, not my normalcy.
Ooh.
So what sticks in your...
are what are important.
No, that's what stuck in your head.
Yeah. But what, can you give me one? But we'll talk about the circle.
I
because
never
you don't
dance.
even remember that. Raymond Kaczorski. In front of... I'm gonna do it right here.
I remember. No, I don't want to go through that again.
Because it was an arm thing.
Yeah.
Right?
It was, yeah.
It was a Hall & Oates arm thing.
Yeah.
But do you think that I remember that? Because I understand, never, ever, like, go out and dance, never dance. But do you think it's odd then that you did it in front of me? I wasn't that young. I would have been between like 7 and 9 because that was at Mansfield.
No, and you'd be so not judgmental at that
And
age.
That's what you like. And,
that
age.
Well, you're always not judgmental.
At that age. But But I wonder if it's because I felt, and this is actually kind of cool, it's going to make me cry. Maybe it's because there's not a lot of people you can be real around. So the moments where I got to see pieces of you that nobody else that got to see, I wonder if subconsciously they resonated or stuck in my head. Because Raymond, I swear to God, I might have been 8, right? In that moment.
Yep.
And I remember my mom's dresser.
Yep.
I remember where it was. Like,
was it your mom's dresser or was it?
It was in mom's.
My mom's.
No, it wasn't in grandma's room. It was in mom's.
So I thought it was like the
big area. No,
it was the big mirror on top of it or something like that. So
Mom did have a big mirror. Okay. Yeah. Do you think that's why?
I think, yeah. I've talked to you how every waking moment is a performance for the most part. So every now and then you gleam into who I really am.
You think every waking moment's a performance for you?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So. Oh man, this is going to be.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, I feel tired for you. No wonder you just woke up from a nap.
Yeah.
So to give people a little bit more context, you're probably, let's be honest, the reason why I wanted to become a teacher.
I'm pretty good.
Right. And humble. You guys wonder why I'm not humble? But you are very good. And I remember watching, again, I don't know what age this was, but I remember watching you teach grade 13 physics, and you did something insane. Like you jumped off a desk and the kids were laughing and they were enthralled. And this is grade 13 physics. Like most kids want to cry in grade 13 physics. Whereas this group of students, you had this beautiful ability to teach them really, really hard things and important things and then have them laughing in the next minute. And maybe that's why they're like, okay, well, this really sucked, but wait, a joke's coming, just hold on for a second.
Yeah, definitely. It's the style that I used. You have to have a payoff. Right. You got kids coming into a physics classroom, and it's hard work. There's no doubt about it. But there's got to be something that you get out of it that makes them want to keep coming back.
Right.
And it can just be maybe a feeling of superiority because you've done something not many people have. So I'll play on that. But more often than not, it's just letting them see my inane sense of humor and teach, go off on a tangent about some life story and then bring them back. It was very much like they're on a little rubber band where you stretch out and then bring them back so that I can teach them.
Do you think, like, because it's very much, I like to think that's very much how I teach. And it's not like I watched you teach many, many times, but is it weird that I teach like that?
No, I think a good teacher knows that teaching is all about performance.
So you felt like you always felt like you were performing, but you brought in a lot of your real life. So did you feel like you were really, because I know you say, if you're in this group of people, you have to perform. If you're at this kind of family function, you have to perform, whatever. Did you think maybe in front of your students, it was the more real of you, or do you think it's still all performance, I go home exhausted?
I think it can be brutally real when I'm at school teaching. So yeah.
What is that? Can you explain that?
I'm not sure I can. In a physics classroom was where I was comfortable, right? With all the anxiety around my life. And I could go into that room. It would be like slipping on a comfy cardigan, talk about what I love, because that's what I think is missing in the education system today.
Yeah.
It's almost verboten to say, I love my subject. You have to say you love your kids. And I'm telling you, high school age kids are challenging. And they're sometimes not very lovable at all.
It's true.
But to be able to go in and talk about something I love. And, and that enthusiasm can be contagious. So, bring that into the mix. Realize, that you've got to be a performer or a storyteller. Well, you don't have to. Let's be honest. One of the things about your book is that you were giving your advice on what it means to be a quality teacher. I'm not sure I'd agree with it because there's just so many different ways you can tap into students, right? So, and that's the problem. That's the concern about your book. It'll be a hard sell for teachers because teachers don't like to be told
like being told what to do.
Yeah,
that's actually good. But that's actually why I think I'll like it. I would love for it to spark just hard discussions and big discussions about how to do different things and how, exactly like you said, like how to tap into that, what you think the most important parts are. But I think it's funny because I think that's actually, and I guess I could have said this in some sense, because I think that's the beauty of it, is that there can't be, and I think I said it in some context, there can be no objectivity in teaching. Not in the way that you choose to do it, not in the application of it. Sure, there could be objectivity in this is wrong, but this is right. There could be some of that, more so in physics maybe than in the courses that I teach. But there can be no objectivity in the right way to teach per se. And if there can't be any objectivity in it, that's what makes it, because I talk about this all the time. How do you identify quality, great teachers? We're not making widgets. It's not like, oh, I made 50,000 last year, I want to make X amount this year. And it can't be by their grades, because you've had classes that are like 90s and then 50s. Right. Same teacher, same, right?
But I've watched your video on, what is it, a hard C?
I like a hard C.
If they're working hard and they're not getting, well, a mark of 90 means you're exceptional. And it would be nice that every student in the world thought they were exceptional intellectually. and they were not all there. I don't even know if sure I was there.
What do you mean? You don't think you were exceptional? You got straight 95s through everything.
Because I busted my hump. I worked really, really
Oh,
hard.
you don't think
That
you
was
were
not a natural.
exceptional?
No.
Okay.
And that comes from Dad, right? That whole European
work ethic,
and pride in a job well done.
Mm-hmm.
The major concern I had when I was going to retire.
Yeah.
Where would that pride come from?
How do you feel? Ray's just retired, like what, this year, but you've been doing a lot of supply and stuff.
Not a lot of supply, enough for me to realize that I made the right decision
to be done.
Yeah. The world changes in education. It's cyclical, but eventually enough inane comes your way where you, even though you love the job, you just say, I can't take it anymore. What I found when I retired, my concern was, what was I going to be when I retired if not a physics teacher? What I found
help
out,
with Angela Johnson.
Yeah, definitely. What I found out is what I was going to be was happy.
Oh, wow.
The stresses just are gone. I don't think you realize it while you're teaching.
Slow boil.
Yeah, how truly stressful it is dealing with all the things outside of the classroom. And then to just have that removed. Like, I didn't think I was wired for happy. And then all of a sudden I found out what the problem was. And I don't mean it in a hugely negative way. I loved teaching. I love center stage. I love entertaining. I love sharing my love of physics. Mm-hmm. But that makes me obsolete at the same time too.
Why? Because of how
centered it is around me.
Oh.
Yeah. I would go into every PD activity. And inevitably it was stop being the center, be the facilitator. And I'm not.
That's interesting.
Teaching offered me an opportunity to feel normal. I went into physics. It was my comfort zone. None of my anxieties were there. And then I got to share stories and have these lovely conversations. And then I'd go home and turn it all off and then crawl back into the shell. So I'm not saying what I was doing is good for everybody. I'm not saying it's the best way to teach. I'm just saying it worked really well for me.
So at what point do you think a lot of the stress, like a lot of the anxiety came as expectations of teachers shifted, as public pressure shifted? You were obviously teaching during the Mike Harris cuts, and then you're teaching when Wynne forced everybody back. And then probably I'm going to guess the biggest shift, which I've kind of, I guess, really has been maybe the last, I want to say 10 or 12 years, this push about IEPs and integrating classrooms and de-streaming everything, right? And so having multiple learning styles in the classroom, because a lot of people will say things to me like, oh, well, back in the day, they had 30, 35 kids. I'm like, yeah, but they didn't have 30, they had 30 or 35 kids that could learn or that were expected to learn this way, whatever this way was in your classroom. Their job was to master this. Whereas today, teachers are very much expected to teach, if you have 30 kids, well, you're going to need 30 styles.
Which is the ultimate lie of education.
Yeah, because it
can't be done.
It can't be done.
No.
So it can't be done. And so was that the frustrating part?
It was a conversation that I had with my administrator. Now you've gone over to the dark side, so maybe you can relate.
Private school.
No. Dark side. You're an administrator now.
Yeah, but I'm also still a teacher.
Which I think makes for the best.
Yeah, I would never, I would always want to teach.
When I started teaching, our VP would teach as well.
Administrators shouldn't be failed teachers.
Best VP I ever had.
Yeah.
It was a conversation, and it was a student who wanted an indefinite amount of time on a test.
Oh, wow.
And
indefinite.
Right, indefinite. Okay. And I was expected to sit there for into the wee hours of the evening or morning, who knows, until they had done everything they could possibly do. And so I eventually removed the test from this said person and said that's all the time. And then I quickly got a phone call from the mom and quickly got a discussion with the dad. And the next thing you know, I'm talking to the principal. And I go, okay, I don't understand. How am I supposed to physically do what you're asking me to do? And how is that going to possibly prepare them for what's coming their way?
Yep.
So in grade 11, I'm preparing them for grade 12. And in grade 12, I'm preparing them for university physics. And the principal said, that's not your job. And I go, I'm sorry, excuse me? It's not your job to prepare the students. And I go, then what in the world is my job? And the response was to give them every opportunity to show that they have an understanding. At which point, that's when I said, okay, I can't do it anymore.
When was that conversation?
I think I went for probably taught for another semester after that. So probably
okay.
a year and a half, 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago.
Well, I think, yeah, you and I fundamentally agree with that. Then the notion that it is there, and I joke about how you judge a teacher, and the only way, in my opinion, a high school teacher, elementary is different. The only way you judge a high school teacher is by how they then step in the world. So at my school, it's all academic. So the vast majority, 99% of my students go to university. That's their goal. So my job isn't to get them high marks. It's not to, alleviate any time it's actually the opposite. I would put time management and late marks and all that stuff goes back into their grade. And I do that because I have that option. But the judgment on me is, okay, you were here with me doing politics or history. When you stepped into university and you took those courses, how well prepared did you feel? How much did I sort of build you up, not just for the material, but for the different stressors that are going to be on you when you go there? And how well did you succeed? Because that can be my only judgment. It can't be the 90. If it's the 90, I just hand out 90s and I say I'm a great teacher.
Well, we've had those discussions with parents, and they never really go very well.
No, of course not, because every parent is looking. But look at the catastrophe that has been. You have celebrities going to prison for
buying their kids
Aunt Becky.
Oh yeah.
Right? For Felicia, buying their kids like SAT scores or pretending they're on the rowing team so they get into USC or whatever school they're trying to get into. And you think to yourself, when you have people saying university doesn't matter anymore, it can feel like, well, that's the reason, because people have delegitimized it to a point where they're just buying whatever they can get and they're actually getting nothing out of it. Right? They're just going to get that piece of paper and say, oh, I went to USC, there's my degree.
Well, for me, everything fell apart with the Harris years.
Oh, it was a bad time.
Mr. John Snobelin, who had to invent how do you phrase it? We need to invent a
I don't even remember
crisis in education so they could change it. And that popularized, did I say that word right?
Yep.
Let's pretend it was.
Popularized.
The bashing of teachers.
So you don't think, that's a great point. So the Harris years where I was in high school, so like what, mid 90s?
Oh, it's all a blur to me.
Onwards, right? Yeah. Like, because when I went to university, that's when I remember mom losing her job. So Harris was cutting all the healthcare, like the hospitals as well. So you don't think you think that was the first moment where it became sort of a political tool?
Yeah, yes. And then the inmates started running the asylum, right? We are at the mercy of an irate parent over and over again who is confident they know what's best, despite my 38 years of experience. And that's frustrating. The kids are great. I can't criticize the kids. High school age kids, teenagers are going to be teenagers. Mm-hmm. They're going to try to look for shortcuts and not have to work too hard about it. It's just that when they want to do this much work and they want to get this much mark. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I can deal with that and get them through and But when the parents buy into that, they need to do this much work to get that much result, then there's not, anyways, things go badly quickly.
Well, yeah, but at that point, what are you teaching? So if you're just, because again, it goes back to the original, they just want the mark for the sake of the mark.
Yes.
You know, I I just recently interviewed a kid who wants to be a pilot. Like that's his dream, right? And I said, "Oh, well, we're into some physics then, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "But I'm going to tell you, that's my dream, but math's hard." And I went, "Okay." And right away I
Dreams are
started to
hard.
sweat because I'm like, "Oh God, he's not good at, like, it's not natural, but he wants this." And he goes, "This is what this kid says to me." He goes, "So he's only in grade 10, going to grade 11." He says, "So I didn't do great in grade 10 math." And I'm thinking, sitting in this interview because it's a private school, right? That somebody's going to say, "But don't worry, you'll do good with him in grade 11, whatever." Not what happened at all. He goes, "So what I would like to do is here redo grade 10 math first semester so I can feel confident, so I know that basis because I know it's a hard math. And then the following semester, I'll do a grade 11. And I'll do that until I'm good enough at math." It almost made me cry. "Until I'm good enough at math to then do physics. Now I got to do physics a couple times." Okay. Because he wants to, there is something very, beautiful about him wanting to attain it. And in my opinion, whether, you know, however many chances it takes, the kid's going to be a freaking pilot.
Pilot, yeah.
If in grade 10 you don't care about redoing math 10, you're going to be good.
No,
That's it.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And if we could just bottle that and have each student consume it, I think we're on to something.
I think so I think it happened during Mike Harris, and I think what happened during Mike Harris, funnily enough, sometimes I wonder what comes first, the horse or the cart, but he wanted to find a way to get them through quick.
Well, it saves money.
Sure. Is he the one that got rid of 13? I can't remember. So that would have been 2002.
Don't know. It's been a while.
It's a great question. Somebody got rid of, so in Ontario, we used to have grade 13, which was obviously different than every other province.
But we could also get a degree with 3 years at university.
Right. Was that only Ontario then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so every other, oh, that's interesting. By the time I started teaching, I taught 1 year of the double cohort year, and then it was just grade 12. So they want to get them through quickly because anytime you have to repeat a course in the public system, you're costing me money.
That's why they want the marks.
They want them out.
Yeah,
so the government lowers the bar.
Oh, definitely.
Lowers the bar, lowers the expectation.
Allows students to get more success, sells that to the public that they're improving our education system.
Yes.
Because they've got some stats that say more people are getting their...
into university, they're getting higher marks, look at us go. And now it's a big problem because I have a lot of students, even when Rebecca went to university, and she would tell me about how they used to take quizzes. And did she ever tell you? They're like,
online quizzes,
yeah. But they do it as a group. Okay. And I'm like, what do you mean you do it as a group? Well, you couldn't have your computer facing anybody else. So they'd sit in a circle. So their monitor was facing everyone, everywhere. And then they would collectively get, 100 or whatever marks they got. And it was a significant chunk of their mark. I want to say like 25%.
There was always that capability, though, because I remember it in university. Physics was hard. Physics was really hard. First day of class teaching physics to my students, I write physics is, put a blank there, period, and I go, fill in the blank.
Physics is fun.
And they write what they think the definition is, and I go, I collect them all, I read all 30 of them, and I go, you're all wrong, and I write the word hard. And I go, here's our starting point, and now let's have some fun. But at university, I remember that there was always cliquey groups. And in math and sciences, quite often there was a weekly assignment worth 10%.
Right.
And so you would bust your hump, and these kids would go, okay, I'll do number 1, you work on number 2, you work on numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll all get back together and we'll share each other's answers. And that's great if you're a social creature, but I was not a social creature. So I kept trying to do it all myself. And so that was really quite stressful. And so as a result, people, I think, far less capable had far more success.
Well,
Look at, there's so many gifts people
yes.
have that they can offer, and I did not have that gift of.
But if you're just doing number one, I'm doing number two, we got somebody else doing number three.
State the obvious here.
Well, it seems like a
You need to
pretty
know all of them to
don't
do
you
the
need
test.
to be able
Yeah.
to do it?
Yeah.
And so what? I just try to memorize your number one, which is the most ridiculous. First of all, physics, you can't really do that, but it's the most ridiculous application of that. So that's interesting to know that it was going on way back then with the. So I'm assuming they would just do that kind of without. It's not like the professor would be like, "Sure, go ahead, do this in groups," or would he assume?
No, but no one's monitoring what you're doing. Let's be honest.
Right.
You'd maybe have 2 hours of lectures and then maybe another each week, and then
Wait a
another
minute,
tutorial.
Do you think, though, it would become apparent in the tests and exams?
They bell the marks.
Oh, Jesus.
Right? What I found.
How long have they been bell curving marks? Maybe that's the start of the issue.
See, university is just a completely different creature.
Today,
you don't not.
Yeah.
Well, no,
or than high
all
school.
the time. Yeah, than high school. It's you don't have in there typically strong communicators. These are people who thrived at school, never really understood why anyone would have problems. And
With
now
the
you put them
part.
and then you put them at the front of a classroom. I remember in first year algebra, raising my hand in the classroom of 350 students, looking at the board, and I'm going, okay, I don't understand how you went from lines 4 to line 5. And the professor turned and looked and turned back to me and said, proof is clear. And I went, thank you. He had no idea why I would have a problem. Now, I had some wonderful professors, so don't get me wrong. But, isn't that also typical in the teaching profession? We all like to criticize the weak people that we had.
Proof is clear.
Proof is clear, yeah.
But it's not just the weak, but if he would have said, it's not the weak that I criticize, because I would absolutely criticize that professor. A strong professor, even if you're not perfect, would have said, I don't know. I don't know how else to explain that step to you. That's a strong person who is intelligent, who doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
So I have no problems criticizing the ass who says proof is clear, because he doesn't know how to explain it any differently. Now, having said that, I don't find that most of my professors were teachers. I think there might be a big difference between definitely. A teacher and a professor.
Oh, yeah.
Even for the social sciences.
Yeah, but listen. What makes you a teacher, though? Is it teacher's college?
No, God, no. That made me less intelligent.
And what makes a good teacher? Is it innate, or is it something that is... I've sat with teachers, and they would turn to me and go, what do these students want me to do? Entertain them? And I'm polite. Inside my head, I'm going, yes, of course, that's what they want you to do.
Yeah.
And I'll just roll my eyes with them, because I didn't want to point out to them that, okay, you're missing, I think, a key aspect of what.
But see, you just don't want to be judgmental.
That's true.
I don't mind being judgmental. I don't mind saying to somebody, well, yeah, because they're children. Yeah. So children are looking, and plus all of the insecurities we feel as adults times them by about 700. That's what they feel. So for them to ask a question, it's like, there some years it takes me forever to find out who's getting it and who's not getting it, because sometimes the kids that present with the most confidence know nothing and go home and are in tears at night because of something that I taught them that they didn't understand. It's very, very hard.
Yeah, but there isn't a more insecure group than a grade 10 student.
I'd say grade 9.
Oh. See, grade 9s at least, boys. They're so young.
I know, but they
come into high school and it's all so new and they're frightened.
Maybe that's different.
And fear is a great motivator, right? There's something that's antiquated as well. Grade 10s have been through 1 year. They're going, hey, this is no big deal. I don't have to work that hard.
And they get hit with that math class that everybody hates now.
Well, it's usually grade 11 where they get clubbed.
I thought it kind of shifted down a little bit. It's not really functions 11 anymore. I thought grade 10 math.
Well, right now grade 9 is de-streamed, right? So no one's being really pushed at all.
But I think, yeah, I think entertaining is important, but I think learning how to do scary things. And it's funny that you say that. You're right. Kids that are really good at school, right? They never learn sometimes, like let's say whether it's a physics or a history, they're getting their 97s pretty easily and they're just moving on with their day. Maybe they don't play volleyball or they don't do this or they don't do that. Maybe they do, because I know some kids that do a lot. But what I find funny is we let them choose their path real early, meaning you can drop everything. You're not good at something, just drop it.
Yeah.
Right. And so what that allows is the kids that are really good in the core courses that we've decided are essential, Shakespeare for the eighth time, those kids get elevated, right? Whereas the kid that's like I watch kids on the computers now and I'm like, I wouldn't even, I would have no idea.
They don't have fear.
Right. But if you put that same kid in a phys ed class, or if you put that same kid sometimes in an English class, or even a history class, you see it differently. Now, the funny part about the way our system is set up is we let everybody really like focus on what they want to do because they have such small, especially without the 13, they have short time to do it, to go to university. You know what I mean? So you're going to do all math and sciences, cool. You go stand in that line. You're going to do all history, you go stand in that line. And then to the negation of everything else. So they're only told and encouraged to do what they're already good at.
And then add to the mix parents encouraging them to avoid challenging courses, yes, so that they can pad their average and get into university.
Because that's what universities are looking at, which I think is the stupidest thing a university
ever does. Am I allowed
does.
to shout out to a particular student?
100%.
Ryan LaPlante.
I don't know.
Thank goodness you were there. Ryan was a student who went on, I think if you Google him, I think he's an actor. So I think it's commercials and things of that nature. He was going to go on to university so that he could teach drama if things didn't work through. So I don't know where you are at this point in time, but he took physics with me, grade 11 and grade 12, and he didn't need them.
He wanted to go into drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember we had something called Character and Education Awards, and so I nominated him. And then learned that when you nominate the student and they get selected, you have to go and speak to them.
Oh,
or speak for them, or speak of them. And that's not my cup of tea. And I remember getting that opportunity to speak into a group of parents, proud parents, and their kids, because they're all being
highlighted. So
yes, and point out my concern over how parents will discourage kids from taking something challenging like a physics course, especially if they don't need it. I can't tell you how many times I hear, yeah, I'm going to drop physics, I don't need it. Once they realize they had to work.
They say the same thing to me. But
okay. About physics?
About politics.
Oh, that's some big. Anyway, so I got to talk and I got to criticize parents. And the room was full of it. Oh, it was just great. And then I had people afterwards come up to me and go, whoa, that was really brave. And I went, well, they're going to give me the forum. I'm going to take it.
Dude, you gave them the microphone. What are you going to do? But I think.
But it was, see, because it used to be the logo for our education for our county was commit to character. And so he had performed all these different characters on stage. So I kind of brought that into the speech. And then speaking of character, here's a person who, despite not needing physics, busted his hump and did well at it. And then it changed to student success. So the new logo is everyone has to be successful.
It just doesn't make sense. What would have made, and again, in my opinion, it's all money. It isn't about, it has never been and isn't about, now you can spin it so you can make it seem like you care about, but if you truly care about a person or a student, you don't want to hand them something and a pat on the head when they haven't earned it. You want to help them earn it. And whatever that takes, right? So if they were really serious about education in this province or in many provinces in the whole North America, by the sounds of it, They would hire specialized teachers more so. They would have more extra help sessions. They would encourage students to stay in classes that were a little bit more difficult. We'd have more of a clear line rather than having standard like the literacy test, for the love of God, which by the way has gotten so easy over the course. Like it's gotten
Oh, it
easier.
has. Yeah. Yeah, of course, because they need to
It's gotten
keep selling the lie
easier.
that they're doing a better and better job.
Absolutely asinine. But to make somebody a good English student or a better English student, right, is difficult. Somebody with
Oh,
dyslexia, for example, right? I have kids that come to me. I'm sure you've taught kids with dyslexia, and they'll say, "Do you have any strategies?" I'm like, I mean, I have ideas. I go, but really, that's a really hard thing to battle and to live with, because when I understand, you don't really ever kind of overcome it. It's always a rewiring in your brain that you always sort of mitigate. I go, you need somebody amazing for that. Why on earth every single school doesn't have that person is beyond me. But what do? Oh, just give them the audiobook. What? Give them the audiobook? That's ridiculous. But I also think it's true of every course. Like you are, and people have seen a lot of your art actually at, but yeah, on different videos. And I always found it interesting that there are courses out there where we just give it for your effort. You get a grade for your effort, and then other courses you get a grade for the right answer.
I, yeah, definitely. I found that at university, no one gives a rat's ass, excuse my language, about how hard you work. They just are looking at the results. That's what the professors were saying until I took a course in Polish.
How hard was that?
Oh, it was a nightmare. I thought somehow maybe genetically I was programmed to speak
His dad's
Polish.
Polish. His Polish.
Never, Dad never spoke Polish in the house, right? Because Mom ruled the house with her iron fist. That's Grandma
Grandma
Ruby.
Ruby.
I didn't find out until I took the Polish course that I had mispronounced my last name for all my
It's
life.
supposed to be a ska, right?
No, that's if you're a female.
Oh, so grandma should have been Kadziorska.
No, Konjorski and
Oh,
Konjorska.
we've been saying Kadziorski
Yeah.
forever.
So I go to the class, and it's a small classroom. You can't hide, right? It was like 7 students. And I'm going, oh, no, this doesn't look good. And we introduce ourselves, and I go, okay, I'm Ray Kadziorski. And she goes, no.
Your name. You're
sure.
so bad at this course, you don't have your name right.
I'm pretty sure that is true. And then she explains to me that the A is a French kind of sound, and the DZI is a J sound. And she goes, your name's Konjorski. And I went, oh. And then phoned Dad that night. Dad, how do you really say her name? And he goes, Konjorski. And I went, well, I'm 23. And he goes, oh, it's your mom. She wanted to pronounce the way it was spelt.
Oh, Grandma.
And I went, oh, there's the dynamic.
Grandma
there.
was so powerful that she
goodness.
changed the family's last name. At least she took his last name. What does he want? Like,
Yeah,
really,
true.
in all fairness.
Oh,
He could have been a Cooper.
Cooper? What a great. I could have been Ray Cooper. Raymond Cooper. That would have been sweet.
Okay,
but
so
get back on track. I took this Polish course, and I busted my hump, and I got a really good mark. And I can't speak any Polish whatsoever to this day, but she recognized that hard work, and I got credit for it. So that was delightful to realize that opportunity was still out there, because I didn't think it was something that was available at university.
But you know why I think it should be still out there, and here's why. Because as soon as you step out of a space that is just marking you on right or wrong, yes or no, clear structure or not, you step out into the real world, and the real world, how you struggle and how you choose to struggle and how hard you work is going to be a much bigger test than what the grade is on the final exam, right? Because you're going to get a bunch of wrong answers in real life. Actually, probably more wrong than right.
That's right. Yeah.
And then how you struggle, that's the test. So as soon as they made, and I don't even remember what's happened, but as soon as they made those like learning skills not a part of the mark, and they said, well, you're not going to take off late marks, you're not going to do this. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's not memorizing the War of 1812, problem, like battles, that's really essential. It's actually the time management. It's how much do you take personal accountability? How do you, all of these things?
That's what you carry with you the rest of your life.
Those,
It's not going
that's
to be.
it.
It's not going to be Newton's third. Yeah, it would be Newton's
It
third
would
law. of
fine,
motion.
fine.
But there's got to be a law in physics that's not all that important.
The Apple law. I think they denied gravity on Joe Rogan the other day.
Oh.
And the Earth is flat.
Oh.
But I think, but there it is, because then you become very, and this is the sort of full circle to how we started, because then you become very aware of how subjective education is in a lot of ways, and that's okay. I don't think this notion of objectivity, of here's your, even a test, right? The way that I give you a test is already subjective, because I've decided the best way to test your intelligence or your capacity or your application skills or whatever. And I've decided 9 times out of 10, it's in this piece of paper that I'm going to give you for 2 hours.
Yeah, but let's not underestimate or undervalue that piece of paper.
I don't have to undervalue it, but I would say that there are many other transferable ways to test your knowledge and your capacity that are better in the real world than sitting down and writing a paper. For example, if I can use politics, but obviously better than a math course. But even in the realm of physics, because so much of it is, I don't want to say a team effort, but there's a lot of that. The nature of that, the way you can explain yourself in the way you can explain yourself in a room, the way that you can have a conversation, the way that you can take nuance of an issue and go, okay, but here's why. The difference is that math teacher that said, what did he say? The proof is there. What did he say? What's his name? Let's give him a shout.
Proof is clear.
Proof is clear. The way that ass said proof is clear versus somebody being able to stand at that board and either explaining it a different way, because in my opinion that is what a teacher is. I think a teacher fundamentally has the capacity to go down many roads to get to the same end, to try to make other people understand that wouldn't understand it prior, but be able to do that. Or heaven friggin' help us, I have no idea. I have no idea, other than that's the way I've always done it, because that's an interesting conversation too.
Yeah, but you speak, forgive me, with the naivete of somebody who teaches in the private sector to class
1,000%. Small class sizes, yes, which is the number one failure of the public system, in my opinion.
Well, it costs money, doesn't it?
Then it comes right back down to that. How much money are we willing to spend? But I don't think we would disagree in saying smaller class sizes. And by the way, I think there is a minimum class size too. Everybody always talks about a maximum.
Definitely.
I think sometimes class sizes can get too small and the dynamic doesn't work anymore, because teens, and I'm mostly speaking about teens, they can't always have they shouldn't always have adult conversations about stuff, right? Like they should make a stupid joke about history, or they should pass a note here, or try to use their phone or whatever, because that social dynamic is about their development. So I think sometimes there's, I work at a small school. There's not like, when I went to high school, there's like tables of cliques, and we talk about the negative implications of that. But then there's also a problem when there's no tables of cliques and you either feel in the school or outside of the school. That's a different issue.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you want to get insight into your students and what they've picked up and what they understand, nothing wrong with the test. Nothing wrong at all.
No.
And so many other opportunities would require smaller class sizes.
That's right.
And and there's nothing wrong with memory and memorizing. If you're going to teach or learn physics, you need to memorize
certain components.
Yeah. Certain things, so that they're at your beck and call when you need to now apply it to the problem that's placed in front of you. And without that memory work, and this is how things have changed over my career. They would not even memorize the key formulas. They would try and reteach themselves during the test. And that's why they could never finish the test.
Right. So it wasn't how long do you take? It was you didn't do it. You didn't study properly, prepare
Right.
properly. Therefore, you're not. Yeah, and that's a hard. Then you're up against. Well, I always thought it funny because I can't really compare it to all the formulas. But even something as simple as timetables, the amount of kids that don't have to memorize a timetable. No wonder it's taking them a crap load of time to do let's say a factoring, just something as simple as factoring. If you don't know your times tables and you're having to either sit down and like just test it out on a calculator 317 times, it's taking you way longer to do because foundationally you don't have what it needs to sort of skip that step of playing around and then move on to something else.
Well, yes, and it has to do with number sense too. The story I would tell my students about Rebecca, how much I loved that girl.
His daughter.
She, when she was a baby, you get that puzzle, that original puzzles, the wooden ones with the little pegs.
Mm.
And, there's 5 things to put in there, circus themed or something like that. And for the life of her, she couldn't do it. And I went, oh no, she has no spatial ability. And then I would take a puzzle and there'd be 20 pieces and I'd leave one piece out and I go, okay, put that last piece in. And it would take her 20 attempts to orient it. She could just not look at it, orient it, and place it in. And I went, oh God, she's going to be terrible at math.
Do you see math? I've always everybody's always says spatial intelligence is math. I get it. I get it theoretically, but in my head I'm like, does that mean you see math in like groupings or distribution or heaven help me graphs? I never understood any of the graphs I've ever done.
Spatial ability helps you to go beyond just blindly memorizing and following
That's how
rules.
I did it. Yeah. That's what I did. That's why I was only good till first year university.
And being good at math is being good at seeing patterns. Mm-hmm. And we're not all programmed to see patterns quickly. That's why in math, they give you 32 questions that are basically the same question over and over again. It alienates some people. The good students will do 10. Well, the good students will do 5 of them and go, this is all the same. And then they'll probably do another 5 just on the calculators, not writing it down and checking to see if they're right. And they go, I've got it. But they're the ones who see the patterns quickly.
Right.
The ones who don't see the patterns have to do all 32 questions. The problem is
they don't want to.
They don't.
Horrible.
They give up before they see the pattern. Too hard. So at age 23, Becca's working at...
Could have been a different chapter.
Could have been a Canadian Tire. She's working at Canadian Tire and she phones me, Dad, I can make change. And I went, oh, awesome, honey. And in my head, I'm going, you're 23. This is a good thing, but a little late.
P.S. Rebecca's incredibly successful executive at a major company.
She's pretty remarkable.
She is. But all of those skills, that they don't ask her to count anything. No.
But the takeaway from that is at the till, she had to keep doing it and doing That's it right. and doing it. She could not give up. And eventually she saw the pattern and it clicked.
Yeah.
So, that math is hard for a lot of students. And not everyone is willing to put in the time to see that pattern and to master it.
Do you think math, more so than English, is difficult?
Oh, God,
for
no.
people?
English was a nightmare for me.
Because because now you're saying it, it's like, but here's what I do think. Mm-hmm. Math, you really get hit over the head with you're right, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. Whereas English, you're like, oh, such a good try. That's a nice poem.
I could never understand how to get better at English.
Do you see what I'm... Because you never saw the pattern. I guarantee there's still a pattern there. You just aren't aware of what it is. Mm. No, I'm dead serious.
Yeah, no,
right?
That makes sense, yeah.
So it's like... And again, this is why the sciences and maths, because they are more so objective, right? Where everything else has this different aspect to it, where there's an effort base. I can see what you were getting at. Right? So I can give that to you. I actually think, and this is hysterical, because most kids hate, they grow up and they hate math. And usually it's around grade 10.
Either love it or you hate it.
And I usually, when I listen to them and I say, why do you hate math so much? Like, you haven't even started, really. When I was in grade 3, I swear to God, whatever goes on in grade 3, it ain't good. Whatever happens in grade 3, I've heard more stories. But it's something that happened that told them that they're never, ever going to see the pattern, or they're never, ever going to. And they just believe it.
Was it their first test?
I don't know what happens in grade 3.
Because I know in grade 4, I wrote my very first test in my entire career of, never had a test at school. We'd go in and we'd do stuff, but we'd never get a test where you had to sit by
Sit down.
yourself, answer questions, hand it in, and get it marked. And it was math, and the teacher used my answers to take it up. And that's all it took for me to invest the rest of my existence into school.
This whole world.
It was, I felt so special.
When you were in grade 4, I don't have much memory of myself at that age, but maybe you don't. Because I know that you've talked a lot about social anxiety and different kinds of anxieties that you have. I've already spoken about it in this podcast. Did you have that in grade 4?
No.
When did that happen?
Puberty, maybe.
Testosterone.
Like, all the stuff I like to collect. It's all stuff from...
I could probably grab some of it right now.
That's okay.
I don't really have anything down here.
It's usually stuff that I had
when you were a kid.
When I was a kid.
Wonder why I did.
During a time where I wasn't constantly in a state of fear. And so I get that comfort. And then I also found out that nostalgia, like nostalgic songs, I live in the 70s in my music, they trigger the same, my apologies to my biology people out there, hormone, same chemical response as when a woman breastfeeds. And it's a soothing experience. So I think when I walk into my room with all of my stuff from a time when I remember not being frightened, it is soothing.
So you think that was disrupted when you hit puberty?
I remember.
Do you think?
Because I didn't know what the hell was going on until.
Yeah, you just look back on it now.
Yeah,
and go, oh, that's
you can look on in
around.
hindsight. Yeah.
But do you or do you think it's because you were putting so much? Because you got to know, Ray got 95 or he was a failure. So do you think it was because you always put that on yourself? I can't imagine grandma or grandpa putting that on you.
No pressure from my parents at all.
So you always put such high pressure, and then if you put that high pressure and then going through, puberty and all the awkwardness and everything everybody else goes through, do you think those two were coupled? And then what made you're always chasing your grade 4 teacher showing your paper? I don't know.
I never chased my grade 4 teacher. She used mine.
No, the memory of your grade 4 teacher. Okay. That's the thing you're trying to replicate for the rest of your life.
Because
I find this interesting because kids talk about anxiety all the time now, right?
Yeah.
You never would have named it.
I would have. No, I would never have been able to name it back then. But it made me productive. When something was assigned, I didn't procrastinate. I needed to get that monkey off my back as quickly as possible. I sat down, I worked on it, and if I got an essay, like I walk into English class, ball of anxiety. God, don't
grade 9 English.
Yeah.
Grade 8 English? Are you feeling that way?
No.
Grade 7?
Well, what happened in grade 8 English was they streamed us.
Oh.
Right? Bluebirds, blackbirds, canaries. I don't know what the terminology was.
They called you different birds?
They gave me a bird, and I wasn't an idiot. I knew that my bird group was not the best. So what did I do? I busted my hump, and I moved up to the better bird group.
Anna was colors. Have you ever heard Anna talk about her school?
No.
It was like purple, orange, yellow. She's like, my mom called to fight to get me into the higher color, and they put me in the higher color, and by 2 months in, I was back down to the lower color. But that's hysterical. Again.
So with the anxiety, something was assigned. I'd start working on it right away. If I had that 10 days to do the essay, I would spend each and every day doing it. And of course, I got really good marks as a result. So I took that chemical imbalance and made it work for me.
But I don't even know if that's what it was, Ray, because you're saying there was a moment, you were in grade 7 English, you were fine. Grade 8 English, they made you a canary. And all of a sudden, everything went off. Now, this is the interesting conversation to have because I know you and I don't, it's not like we're nice and soft and cuddly about telling kids, okay, well, you're here or you're here.
Mm-hmm.
But streaming a kid in grade 8 gave you a level of anxiety and stress, and a level of anxiety is always
good. Something to shoot for, too.
But when you just described you're a big ball of stress, you shouldn't feel that way entering into any sort of thing without a significant cause. And your cause was simply being categorized by birds.
No, my cause was chemical.
Well, after puberty.
There was something going on there. Hey, in grade 7, I was with the social group. I was so in the group. And then grade 8, yeah, that's when things separated. By the time I got to high school, I was very much keep to myself, concentrate on the school. Didn't enjoy high school. It was a lot of hard work. University, even more so. Hated that stuff. What I found was interesting. Um, I have the 2 stepsons, right?
Yes.
So, and Linda was getting child support. That's my wife, and so when they became 18, I guess there was no longer that, and so all of a sudden things became more expensive. And as I'm sitting there playing Civilization on the computer, Linda walks in and goes, "There's got to be something you could be doing with your time better than this."
Roll.
And I turned to her and I went, "Damn you to hell," because
that's what
I
calmed
don't.
the
Yeah,
angst. That was your thing.
no,
that was your.
I only had 3 years of university because of the
Oh,
stressors.
right.
So then I went back
Oh, I
online
remember
and
that.
I did
You got
my
your 4th year.
and
Remember all your Post-its.
and it was a wonderful experience because at university there's just too much work coming your way and you just can't master it. And that left me
That's
constantly
interesting.
anxious. But when I did these other courses, I could start and I could finish anytime I wanted. And so I could invest as much time as I wanted and mastered it. Got the marks that I remember getting and just reaffirming that, yeah, I'm pretty good at this stuff.
I'm about to make a comparison you're not going to like.
Oh, no.
You just described why that kid wants all the time in the world to write that test.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same thing. Now, do I understand objectively it doesn't work the same way?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But what you're saying is you want to be able to master it. And until you can master it,
Yeah.
whether or not that's healthy, which is a whole different podcast,
Yeah.
I don't know. But you want to be able to master it. And if given enough time, you had the capacity to do so. And maybe not that kid.
No. I cut you off because I invest that time up front and then I walk in and I do the test.
Yeah, but you're
Right?
still...
Writing the test was fun.
Yeah, but
preparing for the test was a nightmare.
You still think, and we do disagree on this, because you still think the sit down, be quiet, and take that test for 2 hours is the be all and end all, and I just don't.
Okay.
Again, for math, it's a little bit different because
it's a lot of bit different.
Yeah, it's not. But even in a course like physics, right? To be a real physicist, you're up making mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. There is no end. There was a guy on TikTok who, when he teaches about quantum mechanics or whatever, which is like, I guess, so incredibly hard. Am I getting that word right?
Yeah.
So the first thing he says is, okay, he goes, listen, nobody knows what they're doing in this field. Nobody. We're all stupid. So I'm going to give you information so you can feel equally stupid to me, so you can know this much.
That would have been liberating to hear those words.
And it was so good. And the whole class laughs. Mm-hmm. He goes, so just so you know, you're never going to understand it. But also so you know, I've been teaching for 45 years and I still don't. So we're all in that kind of same boat because that's not playing to a test. There will be tests, I'm assuming, in his class. Yeah. But what he's saying is that kind of theoretical, that act of not replicating what's been done, but trying to decide what needs to still be done is totally different.
But I think you're misinterpreting how the tests work. Like in physics, you write a question or solve a problem. It's not worth one.
Oh, yeah. No, I understand.
It's worth several marks,
sure.
right? And if you don't get the right answer, that's a chore for the teacher because now we got to go through and find out what logic was accurate in there. Right, and so they're getting marks for that. Yeah. So it's not like...
Do they mark that way in physics in university, though? That you get a Scantron sheet? Yeah. Maybe when you get old, like later on. There's no way first year physics there. Is there? I
think what they do is if you get the right answer, they assume everything is perfect. And they don't look at it.
I don't think that's right.
No, I agree completely.
Oh my God.
Because my first test, physics test, 10 multiple choice questions, 2 hours. I think I scored worse than a chimpanzee would have. And I got scholarships. It was the most demoralizing experience of my life.
If you get the right answer, they assume all... Guys, that might be the worst metaphor for life. If you get the right answer, we're assuming your logic is sound. I feel physically uncomfortable as that answer.
It's how they do those, you know how they do math competitions?
Yeah.
There's a physics competition. I don't want to specifically say what It is. But I'm confident
Why, you don't
that's
want to
the
give a
way it's
shout out to the
done.
physics competition?
But they will only look at your written responses if you're in the elitist group that got enough of the right answers.
I just hate all of that.
Yeah.
And is that just lazy because numbers wise? Is that what we're doing? We're just quickly differentiating?
Well, that and the fact that it is the kind of black and white nature of science. There is a right and
But
wrongness
that's
to it.
hilarious because what you're stipulating is it's not the black and white. It's actually quite the opposite.
No. There's so many flipping shades of
So
gray.
many shades of gray. Okay, what do you hate about the way that in my book the most? About when I talk about teaching? Because by the way, I think we've just agreed on the fundamentals of education and of teaching. What do you mean sports? You can't disagree with sports. That's important.
I think you gave the impression that sports somehow makes one...
Makes me, not one.
Makes people somehow acquire a work ethic or a drive. And I think it's just another opportunity to show and showcase people who have work ethic and drive. I don't think it promotes it. I think it just gives people another opportunity. So I think it's put on a pedestal.
Did for me.
Yeah, well, it did.
But it did for me.
No, it gave you an opportunity to take your drive and focus it on something.
But I didn't have the drive till I was given the opportunity. Not in sport, not in volleyball. Really? I'm telling you right now, there was something about being on that team in that time that made me say, and nothing leading up to that, because here's the problem. Athletics came kind of naturally. I was a good baseball player. I was a good skier, right? So all of that came naturally. I was not very good at basketball, but you bully through. And volleyball in the younger years, I was decent enough to be on the starting six, right? And so when I didn't think I was going to make the team that I saw as being sort of the pinnacle of something, and maybe in that moment it would have been popularity, or it would have been, some sort of stardom in high school. I thought I was never going to be there. And where I had work ethic wasn't volleyball, it was rugby. And the only reason I had it in rugby was because everybody sucked because we didn't know the game. It was the first year that we had rugby at Anderson. And so what I understood of it is go really hard, go really fast, hold on to the ball. Mm. And there was something pure about that. And so that's what I did before I got hurt. When you get hurt, you're like, maybe I won't go so hard next time. But so I learned, and somebody watched me do that and then said, give her a go over here. So I think I had elements of that.
You were a blackbird and you wanted to become a bluebird.
Was that higher?
I think that's the...
Bluebirds are the highest?
I think it was bluebirds. I don't want to...
I find it slightly racist.
But, yeah.
But that's, and the thing about that team is I was never, till the day I was done, the best player on the team. Never. But I do think I was a great leader. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something when I say people should do sports, I'm not saying do team sports all the time, but I do think there's an element, there's a socialization. You didn't do it, but I think there's a socialization element of relying on other people in a instant way, meaning whatever sport I'm playing, for the most part, sometimes baseball you can get in your head, but rugby and it's like you're either in it or you're getting hit by something. So you don't have all that anxiety, all that overthinking, all that stuff that maybe could have plagued somebody, any given Sunday. Now all of a sudden can't because you don't have space for it. And I would probably argue the same is true if you're into music, which I've never been able to do, right? But if you're writing music, or if you're playing an instrument, or if, whatever you're doing, I have a feeling that when that part of your brain is tuned in, that's it.
Yeah. That's
what you're doing. And so I think we do kids a real injustice, like incredible injustice, when we say, oh, you only have to take grade 9 gym. You never have to take music again. Oh, you can't draw. Don't ever take art again, because you're losing pieces.
Yes. You need all those opportunities so that you can find that drive.
Yeah. And struggle.
And once you've done it with something, you can apply it to everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And that's why I've always thought that the best teachers and again, generalization, but I think I'm pretty right, weren't always the best natural students.
Oh, no, yeah, no. If you've struggled, you can
Yeah.
understand where your
You
students
can,
are coming
and
from.
the same with athletics. The best coaches are not like Wayne Gretzky. He's not. I don't think he's a good hockey coach. I think he's proven he's not. Why? Because he could just do it. You know, Beethoven couldn't have taught. He just played. You can't teach that kind of innate genius, whether it's in physics or on the basketball court or doing whatever kind of endeavor. You can't teach that. I think you just are.
So
But
I think we
athletics
all
still
need
has
something
it.
to excel at. And if your thing is sports, great. I just think it's weighted heavily. Like
100%.
sports people in
Yes, yes,
school get that
yes.
elevated we call it buy-ins as opposed to buyouts.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
everyone comes and they cheer you on. And then there's those announcements in the morning where they talk about all the individual accomplishments for everybody on the team, which just gets my goat because it's a team. So you shouldn't be talking individual. And I want to go in there and say, okay, yeah, well, in physics class, we had an awesome exam test. And
But don't you think, yeah.
Billy down there came in hard at the end.
What was the other kid's name that you gave a shout out to?
Ryan LaPlante.
There we go. Ryan. We're going to give a second shout out. But you just said something quite intelligent, because it's like you don't take away the accolades of the athletes. You elevate the accolades of every other student in every capacity. Somebody that can paint. I've had students that have sat down and drawn like a face off like a random picture. And I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, oh, well, I was done my thing. So I'm like, what have you created here? Right? We need to figure out how to elevate all of those things, because you're right. Maybe that's the thing. That's the moment they go, holy crap, I am special. I have something special. Because I know this sounds cheesy, but I still believe if everybody has something beautiful and special that they can do, if we can elevate that, then maybe you can give enough confidence to say, okay, cool, but can you try a little harder to do my politics paper?
And that makes sense, as opposed to if you work hard enough, you can do anything.
No. If you work hard enough.
Sorry, there's a lot of things
I
could
never
do.
I like this. If you work hard enough, you will get better at things. That's it. That's all I can promise.
Yes.
You're going to suck a little less than you did yesterday.
Right.
I like it. Well, thank you so much, Ray. Is there any words of wisdom that you want to leave our viewers? We didn't even talk about the circle, but you don't even remember teaching me how to draw.
That was an oval.
It was an oval, whatever.
You said I said something intelligent. I say a lot of intelligent things. I don't like the fact that you singled it out as one thing.
Oh, I was just pointing it out, Kadziorsky. I'm not demoting your bird or anything, all right? Okay. Thank you guys for hanging out. I will see you next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. Dismissed.